how about congestion? They say they want to have transit to help relieve congestion. Now, when I flew in here, I looked down at the freeways and I said to the person in the seat sitting next to me, I don't see much congestion out there. It's pretty close to 5 o'clock. She said, well, rush hour starts at 5. Yeah, what time does it end? About 6. I don't know if you've ever been to a really congested city. Rush hour is generally 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon and 3 to 4 hours in the morning. In Los Angeles, they don't have rush hours. They have rush days. They call them weekdays. So you don't have serious congestion here. But let's say you want to relieve congestion. We already pointed out that Indianapolis Indigo carries about 1.2% of commuters to work. Let's say you could spend a whole lot more money on transit and double that to 2.4% of commuters. Do you think that taking 1.2% of cars off the road would do much to relieve traffic congestion? No. There's a lot more cost-effective ways to relieve congestion than spending $1.3 billion or more on transit. Besides, there's no evidence that spending a lot more on transit really does allow you to increase transit's share of commuting. Let's look at the cities across the country that have spent a lot on transit starting in the 1980s to see what's happened to transit's share of commuting in those cities. Now here's the cities that the rail enthusiasts never want to tell you about. Cities like Baltimore, Buffalo, Miami, even Atlanta have lost a huge amount of market share from transit. Why? Because they spent a lot on highly visible transit lines, and in order to pay for them, they cut bus service throughout the city. In Atlanta, they call it transit apartheid, because they build rail lines to white middle-class neighborhoods and cut bus service to poor black neighborhoods. In Los Angeles, the NAACP actually successfully sued the transit agency, forcing them to restore bus service that they had cut. They had lost 17% of their transit riders because of cuts to bus service. They restored it and now have got those transit riders back. Now here's the success stories. Portland, San Diego, other cities that you often hear about as cities that have great transit, and yet they've also lost market share of commuters. In Washington, if any of you have been to Washington, you've ridden the rail line there, probably. Between 1990 and 2000, they not only lost market share, but although they gained 100,000 jobs in the Washington area, transit lost 22,000 daily transit commuters. So 120,000, they gained 120,000 new automobile commuters. That reversed a little bit between 2000 and 2010, but still you can see it lost market share. Then you can look at communities that started building transit in the 1990s, like Dallas and Salt Lake City. Compare 1990s market share with 2010. Again, they all lost market share. So transit, spending a lot of money on transit doesn't increase market share. At best, it might slow the decline of market share, but that's not going to relieve congestion significantly. There's a lot better ways to relieve congestion. There's only one city in America that has managed to significantly increase transit's market share since 1980. That is Las Vegas. Las Vegas has been the fastest growing urban area in America. And between 1980 and 2000, they more than doubled transit's share of riders. But they didn't do it by spending a lot of money on transit. Instead, they did it by spending less money on transit. First of all, they didn't build any rail transit. Some private company went and built a model monorail, but it was a total failure and they went bankrupt. Instead, they contracted out all bus services to private contractors, saving 20 to 50%. That allowed them to significantly boost transit service. They have about twice as many transit routes as Indianapolis, but they have 3 times as many buses, which means each transit route has buses that operate more frequently than Indigo's buses. And that has increased market share. But you still have to ask, do you want to spend the money to do that? Is it really going to benefit people to do that? Well, the final reason given in the Indy Connect report for increasing spending on transit is air quality compliance. Now, we all know that our air is totally polluted, and it's all because of those evil automobiles, right? Well, that was true in 1970. It's no longer true today, thanks to EPA auto emission rules. Even though we drive almost 3 times as many miles in 1970, total air pollution emissions are down by 80%. So our cars are a lot cleaner. Many states have passed laws requiring what are called partial zero emission vehicles. In Oregon is one of those states. I bought a car a few years ago. It's a partial zero emission vehicle. That means it pollutes less than 1% as much as the same car would have polluted in 1970. It didn't cost me anything extra. I don't think Indiana requires them, but if you buy one, it'll cost you about $200 extra to get it. So Indiana could pass a law requiring it, and that would clean your air up a little bit faster. It wouldn't cost very much at all. But the point is, air pollution is not an issue. There are other environmental issues people raise, like energy. How about if we want to use transit to get people out of their cars to save energy? Well, it so happens that Indigo uses almost 7,000 British thermal units to move one passenger 1 mile. That's twice as much as the average car. So really, we want to get people out of transit and into their cars to save energy. Now, the most efficient light rail lines in America do a little better than the average car, but a Prius does a lot better than almost any transit system in America, or any transit line in America. And by the way, greenhouse gas emissions, unless your electricity comes from hydroelectric dams or some other renewable source, greenhouse gas emissions are almost exactly proportional to energy consumption. And your electricity mostly comes from burning fossil fuels, so pretty much the greenhouse gas emissions from light rail, if you had light rail, would be proportional to your energy consumption. You'd probably look like Dallas here. Now, in the next 15 years, the Obama administration is requiring cars to become a lot more fuel efficient. By 2025, the average new car sold will have to be more fuel efficient than a Prius is today. So that means that the average fuel efficiency of the average car on the road by 2025 will end up being more fuel efficient than any transit line anywhere in the country. Driving will be the green form of travel, and the environmentalists will be out there begging people to stop riding transit and getting in their cars so they can save energy and stop emitting global greenhouse gases. All right. The Indy Connect plan, as you know, doesn't really emphasize rail transit, but there is this plan to build a light rail line or something along what's called the Green Line Corridor. Now, the Green Line Corridor plan says we're going to consider buses, but the very first map in the plan shows the rail line. I just want to go over some transit jargon because a lot of people don't understand what light rail is and heavy rail and all these other things. Now, let's start with streetcars. Streetcars are becoming really popular now because the federal government is handing out money for streetcars right and left, and so every city is lining up to get their streetcar grants. Streetcars are single cars. They can't be coupled together. They hold about 30 seats, but they have room for another 60 or 70 people standing. And they operate in the streets, which means they generally take up more space than the number of cars they displace, so they increase congestion. They go an average of about 6 to 8 miles an hour. Top speed of streetcars in Portland is about 25 miles an hour. Light rail is a little different. You can couple them together. Each light rail car is about 100 feet long, so depending on the number of blocks in your city, the length of the blocks in your city, you can couple 2 or 3 cars together. If you have 300-foot blocks, you can have 3-car trains. Light rail doesn't mean lightweight, it means light capacity. Because you can only have 3-car trains, you can't carry very many people in them compared to what's called heavy rail. That's subways and elevateds. Subways and elevateds, you can have 8 or 10-car trains, which means you can carry a lot more people than light rail. Light rail also is slow. It's not rapid transit. it goes about 20 miles an hour. Heavy rail goes about 30 or 35 miles an hour because it doesn't go in the streets. It never intersects the streets. It always has its own exclusive right-of-way. Light rail sometimes has an exclusive right-of-way, but generally, even if it doesn't go that fast. St. Louis is almost all an exclusive right-of-way, but it only goes 28 miles an hour on the average. Finally, there's commuter rail, which generally consists of a locomotive pulling powerless cars without power. Often shares track with freight trains, mainly goes during rush hours. Average speed, probably about 35 miles an hour. About the same, or maybe a little faster than heavy rail. So, what you have is a corridor where the government owns, local governments own tracks, and I think those tracks are burning a hole in somebody's pocket. Somebody is saying, well, we own the right-of-way. We own the tracks. It'd be cheap to put light rail on it, and it'd be a waste to not do it. We can't let that go to waste. So here's the map. You don't see any roads on there. You just see the right-of-way. It's the first map shown in the green line plan. So the thing is, it's not cheap. It's never cheap. Rails are really, really expensive. That's why almost every city in America, more than 800 cities in America, had rail transit in 1910. By 1966, only 8 cities did. Then it started growing again, mainly because of federal grants.